Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at science nonfiction writing. Before we jump straight into our article, let's remember that when we are looking at reading comprehension, especially for our standardized exams and end of course diagnostics, we particularly are looking at how authors communicate in order to help us annotate, and really these exams are just testing for main ideas and then any inferences that we can make dependent upon whatever the author is communicating in these main ideas that we're annotating for. So what we are doing essentially is we are writing our annotations or notes to the side in the margins so that we can use them as a quick reference guide to efficiently and accurately answer our multiple choice questions. Now, it depends on what the author is writing in the genre on how we are going to annotate. For example, in fiction, which is a creative work of the imagination, an author will interweave together characterization, plot development, setting, conflict, and resolution to communicate their main ideas. When we understand how these interweave together, we are understanding what they are communicating on a surface level. Quite opposite to fiction is nonfiction, informational text. Because we are being bombarded with a lot of information, we are going to need to answer these questions because the authors have already embedded the answers to these, and like detectives or sleuths, we're going back into the passages to find the answers to these questions. Who, what, when, where, why, how. We're especially focusing on the who or the subject, the topic of the paragraph. We are doing this for each paragraph. What is happening to that subject and why or how that is happening. From time to time, we do need to include a when or a where to understand the main idea. It's not always necessary. Oftentimes it's not. Sometimes we do include a when or a where into our what, our who, or our why or how, as there is overlap. And this is how we essentially are annotating for these passages. These are our strategies. Now today we're taking a look at nonfiction, more specifically science. To put this into context, we do have hard and soft sciences. The hard sciences use math explicitly because they have more control over the variables and conclusions. This would include physics, chemistry, astronomy, biology, and such. Our soft sciences use the process of collecting this data and then use the best methods possible to analyze the information. These are a bit more difficult to predict because we're looking at more subjective, abstract types of sciences that we have to correlate or extrapolate the data to. And that's not always so easy. For example, social psychology really explores A, what motivates human behavior, and B, how that motivation is influenced by society. That is very subjective and abstract. That would be an example of a soft science. Others include sociology and philosophy, psychology in general, economics, and so forth. The terms hard and soft refer strictly to the way the scientific method is used. Now let's take a look at our article. We're going to annotate using our 5 W's plus H. Let's read the first paragraph. The term tides has come to represent the cyclical rising and falling of ocean waters, most notably evident along the shoreline as the border between land and sea moves in and out with the passing of the day. The primary reason for this constant redefinition of the boundaries of the sea is the gravitational force of the moon. Now let's go in and highlight. First we look at our who. Who will be the topic or subject? Here the topic will be tides. This paragraph is all about our ocean tides. What will be what's happening to those tides? What do we learn about tides? Here we read that they move in and out with the passing of the day. Now the question is, why or how does that happen? Why or how do tides move in and out with the passing of the day? Here we see it's because of the gravitational force of the moon. Now notice our highlights here are showing us exactly what we're going to draw out of the paragraph. We are drawing out main ideas, and we're leaving behind supporting details. Now, On test day, we want to summarize this main idea into just a few words or phrases. However, in our English class, when the teacher asks us to give a paraphrase, to summarize, to state in our own words, anything along those lines, we will want to, of course, provide complete sentences. So let's go ahead and put this into a complete sentence. The moon's gravity causes the ocean's tides to move in and out. Now, when we're writing in the margins, we just want to use a few phrases here. We could say, tides caused by moon's gravity, for example. What we write into the margins is a reference point for us to go back and find the answers efficiently and accurately so that we can eliminate the wrong answer choices very quickly. We use these notes to know exactly what's in the paragraph. Sometimes we have to answer a general question, sometimes a specific question. A more general question we can depend heavily on our notes for, these annotations we're making in the margins. However, on specific questions, we'll use our notes as a reference point to know exactly which paragraph to go and find that specific piece of information if the lines are not given. Now let's take a look at the second paragraph. This force of lunar gravity is not as strong as Earth's own gravitational pull, which keeps our bodies and our homes from being pulled off the ground, through the sky, and into space toward the moon. It is a strong enough force, however, to exert a certain gravitational pull as the moon passes over Earth's surface. This pull causes the water level to rise, as the water is literally pulled ever so slightly toward the moon, in those parts of the ocean that are exposed to the moon and its gravitational forces. When the water level in one part of the ocean rises, it must naturally fall in another, and this is what causes water level to change dramatically at times along any given piece of coastline. Now let's go highlight. First we want to highlight for our who, or the subject. Here we're looking at the force of lunar gravity. What about that force? It exerts a certain gravitational pull. Now notice we have a why or a how. So let's skip down just a bit down here and notice that sometimes our whys and hows are all grouped up at the beginning, sometimes they're in the middle, sometimes they're at the end. So let's go figure out exactly what's happening. Here's the cause and effect relationship. It causes the water level to rise. Now let's go back and see why or how. Now we see it exerts a certain gravitational pull. Let's notice the differences here between our who, what, why, or how. The force of lunar gravity exerts a certain gravitational pull which causes the water level to rise, to change. On any coastline. Now let's put these together into a main idea statement. This force of lunar gravity exerts a gravitational pull that causes coastline water levels to change. Now if we want to put this into less words, just a few phrases, we can say the moon's gravity causes the tides. We have a cause and effect relationship. Now let's go to our questions. We'll begin with number 1. Which one of the following is the most obvious effect of the tides? Now we can go through each of these. Let's take a look at A. A part of the beach that was once dry is now underwater. That makes sense. That's what this article is about, explaining why that would happen. The tides move in, it's full of water, they move out, there's no water there any longer. That checks. Let's look at B. Floods cause great damage during heavy rainstorms. We do not have any textual evidence to support this. We want to always go back and look at textual evidence to support our answers. Let's eliminate B. The moon is not visible. We do not have any textual evidence to support the moon's visibility or lack therein. D. Water falls from the ocean. This would be caused by the Earth's gravity. We don't have any information here in our text to give us D as an answer choice. Let's eliminate. Our answer is A. Let's take a look at number 2. The word lunar most nearly means, now this is vocabulary and context. This is where we find our word lunar. If we need context, we can look at the sentences and ideas immediately surrounding our word in question. For example, we have the moon right before this, as is connected to the gravitational force of the moon, which makes sense with lunar gravity. So we know it has to do with the moon. Lunar gravity does not mean weak gravity. It does not mean strong gravity, nor does it mean destructive gravity. However, it does mean that it's related to the moon. The answer is D. Number 3, it can be inferred from the passage that if one were to travel to the moon. Now, inferences are made when we understand what the author is implying or implicitly communicating. Oftentimes, authors will not explicitly communicate something, they will imply it, or there will be implicit communication there. We can make inferences, again, based off of textual evidence. Let's take a look at our answer choices. Number 3, that water would be found on its surface. We do not have any textual evidence to support that water would be found on the moon's surface. B, that an object, if dropped, would float away from the surface of the moon. This would be opposite to what we would expect because the moon has gravity, and gravity actually causes objects to fall, not to drift away or float away. Let's eliminate B. C says that tides are more dramatic during the day than during the night. Again, we have no textual evidence to support this. D, that an object, if dropped, would fall to the moon's surface. Yes, let's notice that this is the opposite of B. And this is true because gravity causes objects to fall, not to float away. So D is our answer. Let's take a look at 4. The author's primary purpose in writing this passage is to... Now, I've added a note here that to refute means to prove a statement or theory to be false, or to disprove, as this may be a more academic term for us. Let's go to our answer choices. A says to prove the existence of water on the moon. Again, we're not looking at water on the moon. This may come in from articles we've read and things we've thought about because it's been in popular culture for quite a while, but we don't want to bring in that subjectivity that is not a part of the textual evidence. Let's go ahead and eliminate A. To refute claims that tides are caused by the moon, there's no desire, no purpose here to refute any claims, especially not that tides are caused by the moon. This is the opposite. It's in direct support, and it's explaining that. Now, for our author's purpose questions, we can go back to our notes. Let's remember the note says, the moon's gravity causes the ocean's tides to move in and out. This force of lunar gravity exerts a certain gravitational pull that causes coastline water levels to change. This is what we're looking for. It should be directly in line with that. C, explain the main cause of the ocean's tides. Yes, this is what the article has set out to do. This is what we wrote into our notes. And D is to argue that humans should not interfere with the processes of nature. Again, we don't have any arguments for or against something like that. That is not supported by the text. C is our correct answer. Now let's remember that science-y language is going to be technical in nature. We're going to have technical vocabulary. There's going to be a shared language amongst a community of scientists, but as we are drawing out our main ideas, we're not going to be so concerned about that as we are in what exactly the author is communicating. And that's really what we're looking at. With nonfiction, we can apply this to this strategy to any type of passage, whether it be a historical document, a speech, a scientific article, an encyclopedic entry. We look at answering who, what, why, or how, especially sometimes we need to add a when or a where. For example, especially in an encyclopedic entry or an article on history would present some context in the introductory paragraph, and there probably is going to be an important when or where in there. And this is looking at our first scientific article together, sciencey language, using our nonfiction strategy, the 5 W's plus H, who, what, when, where, why, or how.